London's East End sleeps under a blanket of fog, the kind that smothers street lamps and hides sins not yet discovered. Detective Inspector Marcus Shaw ducked under the yellow police tape, the cold air sharp against his face. Ahead, in a narrow alley behind an old butcher shop, she lay still, the third victim in as many weeks. A woman throat slit, eyes open, arms folded over her chest like a twisted ritual. But what chilled Shaw wasn't the blood. It was the wall behind her, carved with a knife, crude but deliberate, with the words, "I am the shadow that walks beside history." They called him the Ripper. But this wasn't just murder, it was theater, a message, a game, and someone was already losing. Dr. Evelyn Hart hadn't stepped into a police station in 3 years, not since Vienna. But the envelope on her doorstep that morning changed everything. No stamp, no return address, just her name, written in red ink and a folded page inside. A photograph, a crime scene, the latest victim. And scrawled on the back, in handwriting, she recognized instantly, "Tell Evelyn I remember Vienna." She stared at the message for a long time, her breath caught between memory and dread. Whoever the Ripper was, he wasn't just a killer. He knew her, he wanted her back in the game. At Scotland Yard, Inspector Marcus Shaw waited with the case files spread out across the table. 5 victims, each mimicking a murder from the Jack the Ripper case, but updated, modernized, warped. A QR code etched into a mirror. A podcast episode playing on repeat next to a body. A digital map with a countdown. Shaw didn't trust profilers. But Hart wasn't ordinary. She had a reputation, brilliant, unstable, effective. He slid the folder across the table. "Why you?" he asked. She didn't answer. Because she already knew. Because Vienna was unfinished. Because monsters remember each other. The rain returned with a vengeance. East London's Whitechapel district had always carried ghosts in its bone-soled brick, old blood, and names that refused to die. Tonight, the fog pressed in like a second skin, and somewhere beneath it, something moved. A 6th victim. She was found in a deconsecrated chapel, abandoned, rotting, forgotten. The body was posed on the altar, hands bound with cassette tape, butcher's apron carefully draped across her chest. And nearby, a dusty record player spun in endless repetition, playing the same mournful opera aria over and over again. It wasn't just a killing. It was a stage, a scene, a message. Detective Marcus Shaw stood in the arched entryway, his coat dripping rainwater onto the cracked floor. He didn't speak at first, just stared at the body and the theatrical horror of it all. Then, finally, he muttered, "This isn't just escalation. It's a message." Dr. Evelyn Hart stepped into the nave behind him, silent, focused. The air was thick with moisture and memory. She hadn't stepped into a live scene in 3 years, but it came back instantly. She moved toward the altar, scanning details with quiet precision. Then she said, "It's not Jack the Ripper anymore." Shaw turned. "What do you mean?" She pointed toward the symbols carved into the floor. The tape, the music, the precision of it all. "This is curated. The rituals of the Ripper, the flair of the Zodiac, even a touch of the DC sniper's randomness. He's not copying anymore. He's composing." Then, a sound, a shrill, jarring ringtone. Not Shaw's, not Evelyn's. It came from the victim. Shaw moved quickly, pulled on a latex glove. He reached into the butcher's apron and retrieved a scratched, outdated burner phone. One missed call, and one new message. He read it aloud. "Welcome to Act 2, Evelyn." She didn't move, didn't blink, because she knew exactly what that meant. It wasn't just a message. It was an invitation. And the curtain was only just rising. The killer had a rhythm, not just in the pattern of his victims, but in the silence between them. 3 days since the chapel, 3 days since the message. Welcome to Act 2, Evelyn. And still nothing. No body, no call, no blood, only the waiting. Evelyn Hart stood in a restricted records room, deep inside the British Crime Library. Dust lay thick on the shelves, a cathedral of old cases. She pulled out a box labeled Vienna 2019. Inside, her own handwriting, notes, diagrams, photos, and the face she hadn't looked at in years, Matthias Krieger. They'd called him the Conductor, a serial killer who used music as metaphor for each victim, a movement in a bloody symphony. Oh, but they'd never found him. He vanished before the final act. Now he was back, or someone wanted her to think so. Marcus Shaw leaned over his desk, scanning a fresh report. A new murder, but it hadn't been reported by police. It was emailed to Evelyn, directly, with coordinates and a subject line that read, "The Archivist, your next clue." The body was found in an abandoned university library, tied to a desk with microfilm stretched across his eyes, a hole drilled into the floor beneath him leading down to a hidden chamber full of burned files. One phrase was scrawled across the wall in black ink. "History forgets, but I don't." Shaw, grim. "He's not hiding anymore, he's performing." Evelyn, softly. "No, he's remembering." She stared at the wall for a long time. It wasn't just about the murders. It was about memory, about her memory. Each victim tied to something, a case she'd worked, a failure she buried. The Ripper wasn't chasing fame. He was chasing her past. Back in her flat that night, Evelyn spread the crime scene photos across the floor. A timeline began to form. Each body mirrored not just an infamous killer, but a moment in her career. Vienna, Oslo, Toronto, each place a ghost, and all of them pointing to one name, Krieger. But something was off. The signatures weren't quite his, too precise, too theatrical. She whispered to herself, "It's not just him." And suddenly the truth hit. Not a killer. A pair, one playing the old tune, the other conducting something new.